While the Assembly did not create an official permanent National Synodal Council, a red line that the Vatican drew weeks ago, members did vote on forming a transitional committee to establish a permanent Synodal Council in the next 3 years. Jonathan Liedl, senior editor for the National Catholic Register, has been following the German Synodal path closely and attended the gathering in person. He's written multiple articles on all of the issues church leaders are working to implement in the church. And he joins us now from Berlin to talk more about it. Jonathan, great to have you here. You were providing blow-by-blow coverage of the Assembly on Twitter. Do these 200 participants in the Synodal path actually represent the church in Germany?
Montse, I think that's a fantastic question. I think an argument can be made that they represent they're a representative slice of the 22 million people in Germany who claim to be Catholic. However, among those 22 million people, only 5% go to Mass. There's a deep crisis, multi-generational catechesis in Germany. So among those Catholics who believe in the universal faith, who practice the faith sacramentally, go to Mass. No, the Synodal way is not representative of them. And in fact, before I even kicked off in Frankfurt this past week, 5 different delegates quit the process because they cited how it was a prearranged agenda and how they cited it was throwing into doubt central aspects of the Catholic faith. So that's a deep concern of whether this is actually representative of people in the pews, people who are faithful here in Germany.
Before we go into that back and forth, we've seen video of supporters and opponents of the German Synod. How large are each of these groups outside of the Assembly?
Well, on different days of the Assembly, there were different groups gathered. On the first day, you had representatives from Maria 1.0, which is a Catholic group that says Mary doesn't need an update. But you also had pretty sizable groups representing LGBTQ interests in the church. They call it Out in Church here in Germany. And then also a sizable group demonstrating for attempted women's ordination. So I think the different groups, I think one thing we need to keep in mind is that in Germany, the Catholic Church employs 800,000 people. And that's because the church here is enriched by something called the church tax, right? Where people, if they indicate Catholic on their sort of census form, money is automatically going into the church coffers. So the church employs 800,000 people, while only 900,000 people here go to Mass on Sunday. And those two groups don't overlap. So in essence, what you have is a lot of people who work for the church, are involved in church-related activities, who don't even share the beliefs and the faiths and the commitments of the Catholic Church. And so you see a lot of groups that claim to be Catholic that are Catholic in name, and they're certainly loud and they're certainly influential. But I think the deeper question is whether they are in fact representative again of the Catholic faith in Germany.
That's right. You're looking at this reality of 22 million people who say that they're Catholic, identify as Catholic, are incentivized to do so, but only about 900,000 who are really in the life of the church attending Mass on Sunday. We know that some priests and religious have decided to stay out of the Synodal way. They've opted out. Others have decided to stay and participate. How are they dealing, the ones that have decided to stay, with the pressure to vote in a certain way or another?
I think that's a fantastic question. I mean, honestly, I think there are few lay people left who perhaps don't share the animating vision and animating commitment of the Synodal way, and specifically the Central Committee for German Catholics, which is a very powerful lay movement in Germany that is sort of dictating terms here. Among the bishops, though, I think it's very difficult. I think the best way to describe the situation in Germany among the 67 bishops or so is that you have some who are certainly ideologically committed to all the proposals you've already mentioned, the women priests, same-sex blessings, incorporate transgender ideology into the practice of the church. You have kind of a mushy middle, if you will, and then you have maybe a small third, right, that is trying to resist these changes. But what's happened since September, the last assembly of the Synodal way, and then this past week, is that they got rid of secret voting. They got rid of the secret ballot. They did that after 1/3 of the bishops voted against a base text on sexuality that was deeply problematic and heterodoxical in a number of ways. And so 1/3 of bishops, if they vote against something, it vetoes it. In response to that, a very kind of draconian measure to get rid of the secret ballot. And so really, if you see the votes that happened this past assembly on issues of transgender ideology, on issues of same-sex blessings, votes that were directly supposed to be based on that text that got rejected back in September, what you saw is that in a number of instances, instead of 20 bishops voting against it and 3 abstaining, the number of bishops voting for it fell all the way down to 7. And you had in the range of 13 abstaining from it. So a lot of people are looking at it and saying this is the same group that was able to vote back in September against that text on sexuality. But now that the votes are public, so many bishops
changing their minds.
They don't feel comfortable going public, and that's why so many of these things were able to be passed. And I think, again, that indicates the immense amount of pressure and manipulation that these powerful lay groups and lay employees in the German Catholic Church can exert upon the bishops here.
An environment of coercion, for sure. But outside of the assembly, some dioceses have already blessed same-sex unions. Will those dioceses that have not now felt able to do so, will they feel obliged to follow these new edicts that go against church teaching? Will Catholic faithful be forced underground for wanting to be true to the magisterium?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question because, of course, Bishop Batzing at the final press conference, he said to people who might have had concerns about all these different proposals passed, what have we taken away from you, right? You can still live your lives, or bishops in these different dioceses who still want to be faithful to Rome. What have we done to you? But I think the reality on the ground is that there will be a ripple effect. Recently, the German bishops agreed on a new revised labor law that prevents people being removed from ministerial positions for going against church teaching or identifying as transgender, all kinds of things. And the conversations I've had in private indicate that even in the diocese where we think the bishops are rock solid and we think that there's a vibrant kind of Catholic life going on, that there will be an impact, that there will be an effect. So what I've heard from a lot of people right now in Germany is they're asking the question of whether I need to leave the church to remain Catholic. Do I need to stop paying the church tax and disaffiliate, which is a significant issue. I think we can't understand in America because we don't have it. But in a place like Germany, where being Catholic or being Protestant is so significant to your identity, to disaffiliate, it technically bars you from the sacraments in the German church. And so there is a real sense among the faithful here, in good conscience, can I still participate in what is usually the official Catholic Church if it's promoting things that are so heterodoxical and so clearly in violation of what the church actually teaches. So an ongoing situation, I think a lot of people don't know, to be honest with you.
And they don't understand the actual context and the relationship between the church and the government. Really quickly, Jonathan, have other comments from the Vatican or Pope Francis been impactful? Does more need to be done there?
Well, I think we did see some impact, right? You mentioned the letter that was written by the 3 Vatican cardinals telling the German Synodal way not to establish a Synodal Council. But look what the Germans did. They basically put everything in place to get the Synodal Council moving without technically crossing that red line. And so they're going to go to the Vatican, the Synod on Synodality coming up in October, both this year and next year. They really see that as a key strategic moment to push their ideas in the rest of the church. They also had discussions about whether promotional videos or other tactics are needed to promote the ideas of the Synodal way in places like Africa and places like Asia. So I think the Vatican has used words, but the Germans they're very tactful, strategic in what they're doing. And I think the sense of the faithful on the ground is a desperate need for Rome to do something more than just use words, but to actually step in with discipline. So a great desire for that, a sense that that's what's needed, but not a lot of confidence that that's guaranteed to happen.
Well, Jonathan, we will keep relying on you on this developing story, watching for what you're seeing on the ground. Really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Montse.
You can read more of Jonathan Liedl's coverage of the German Synodal Way on the websites of our sister organizations, the National Catholic Register and the Catholic News Agency.